there are so few things as beautiful as riding a horse. But have you ever wondered whether horses like to be ridden? If you have wondered this, like I have, you probably already agree that it is not our right to ride a horse. So here's a few things that I think about. Firstly, I think about the horse. Are they physically comfortable? Are they emotionally balanced and not traumatized? Is their spirit broken to a shut down and submissive horse? There's a saying that says it's easier to break the spirit of a horse than it is to bring it back. One of the most common forms of training is to use pressure to make things uncomfortable to a horse, and when they do what the person or the trainer wants, they release the pressure. So many horses never get the option to choose. They never get the option to say no, which leads me to consent. So there's a lot of talk about consent in the world, and it's wonderful, and I'd love to see this more in the animal world. So when it comes to horses, what does consent mean? And somebody said that if you want to have consent, the horse needs to be able to say no. And in a way, if you really want a horse to be able to say yes, it has to be able to say no, because it can't say no. That means by definition, you're just reading everything as a yes. So with consent, the horse needs to be able to say no. So there's a couple of things to this. How will they say no? Will you pick up on what they're saying? And does the horse even have the courage and the spirit and the confidence to say no? So consent for horses is a whole niche of its own to be looked at. However, there's really simple ways of doing that, and that is responding to the horse's body language and really listening to what they're telling you. And then further, you can also, together with a horse, work out a way that means no, a way that might mean get off of my back, or no, I don't want to do this. So there's a way that you can build in like a signal or a response in the horse, and then you honor that, and that is your no. So that can be relatively easily taught to a horse. The other thing to consider is equipment. Because horses are so large and powerful, much of the equipment used on horses is to control them through pain and restriction, thinking about spurs and bits and whips. Even though the horse is so powerful, in nature they're a prey animal, and their instinct is to often take flight, and they need a herd to feel safe. So riding a horse, particularly riding a horse by itself, is a very big ask, and not every horse is physically and emotionally capable of doing this in a way that they enjoy. So one of the ways that you could get more of a feeling is to remove the equipment, so the horse isn't worried about getting whipped or spiked or yanked around. And that's not advice that I suggest everyone takes everything off, because some things in certain cases would be more comfortable for the horse. For example, a padded bareback pad. So just putting ideas out there, and also further to consider that just because there's no equipment on a horse, it doesn't mean that they still have a choice, because if they're so programmed by fear and have become so submissive, anyone can start taking equipment off, and it looks like the horse is choosing to do things. So you really need to watch very closely. So again, it comes back to, for me, it comes back to listening and observing. Really listening to the horse, and not just listening and observing, but responding to what they're telling you. And then that can build a language where the horse feels listened to and safe enough to say no without any repercussion. And that for me is the beginning of the journey. And something that's so interesting about consent with a horse is just because they say no once, it doesn't mean it's always a no. You might just be creating a foundation for a safe place where they can feel safe enough to try something, or safe enough to engage, or curious enough to engage, once they're confident that they have a voice and that they have a choice. And of course, this is such a bigger conversation, because it depends on, you can't just say, does a horse want to be ridden? It depends on the horse, it depends on the rider, it depends on the circumstances. It's very different for a horse to go for a casual walk out with their friends together in a terrain that they know. So it's such a big conversation to have, and it's a beautiful conversation that people are finally considering the horse and their body and their will in all of this. So if you are like me and you want your horse to be a willing partner, or perhaps it's okay for your horse to choose that it doesn't want to be ridden, it's such a beautiful journey to be able to listen to the horse. And in my experience, I find that the more I listen to the horses, the more willing they are to engage. So if you're still with me in this video, I appreciate that you're watching. And this video was Comet, and from what I can gather, this was the first time he was presented with the thought of someone getting on his back since his racing days. And what I did notice was beautiful Comet, when I stood next to him, he might not have seen a mounting block before, but I think he got the idea that someone was getting up back level, up level to the point where they could climb on his back. I did notice that he started doing a lot more with his mouth, so I think that was a sign of nervousness. So what I actually was doing in this session is just observing him, and also just building trust and seeing what that prospect of riding might mean to him. I'm not even saying he's physically or emotionally capable, or even that I am. It was more just the act of listening and the curiosity to see what type of life would this beautiful horse like, and just to start the conversation and open them up, and to build more trust in the way that he does have a choice now, and he doesn't have to go into a submissive state and be restrained and hurt and everything else that happens in the racing world. So that's what was happening in this video, and I was doing my best to listen and to respond. I didn't reach out and initiate a lot of touch, because I wanted him to feel in control of the situation, and I kept moving the block away, because I found with other horses that it sort of resets the whole scene, so it doesn't build up more and more pressure, as though and it lets them keep having the choice to re-engage if they want to. So I find that that's a really nice way to build trust and to really make sure that everything's on the horse's terms. And it kind of creates draw, where the horse is drawn to you if they choose to be. But yeah, that's what was happening. So thank you so much for watching this video.